Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Counselor Kevin, for the kind introduction and the background to the program under which we are together today. Good afternoon to all ladies and gentlemen listening in. It's truly an honor for me to join this panel with such distinguished co-panelists. I'm very happy and feel privileged to be able to participate today. I am aware that my remarks are being translated simultaneously, so I will be speaking slower than normal. But if there's a need to slow down even further, please, translators, please let me know. Please don't hesitate to interject. So on behalf of UNODC, congratulations, like truly a big congrats for the launch of the Portuguese version. Thank you to all those who have contributed to making it possible, especially the Center for Human Rights and Education in Campo Limpo, which I think is CDHEP, and please forgive my pronunciation, Fazendo Justiça program, and the National Council of Justice. Thanks to your very efficient coordination, the Portuguese version came out much faster and in a more coordinated way than we normally have prepared unofficial translations. And for this, I am very grateful because, as you know, and as you can imagine, there is nothing more effective than translation into national languages in increasing the access to information in those countries. And with this Portuguese version, we are not only able to reach the criminal justice practitioners in Brazil, but also many other Portuguese-speaking countries. And I hope that it will be a useful tool in paving the way for an increased and also an effective use of restorative justice, and of course, overall in access to justice in criminal matters. So in my presentation today, I'd like to first spend some time explaining the background and the scope of the handbook in the English version, the original version, and also share what is new in the handbook and what it can be, how it can be used in the context of your work. I understand that most of the audience members will be criminal justice practitioners, academics, and NGOs in Brazil. And I think there is something for everyone in the book. And I really believe that the book is a distillation of the information that we have so far around the world on restorative justice. So sincerest hope that it will be helpful in your work as well. And then we'll take a look at how they can be, how the specific different parts of handbook can be useful in your work. So first, as you may know, the handbook is actually the newest addition to our existing handbook series, the Criminal Justice Handbook series, which is a collection of more than 60 guidance materials in various areas relating to crime prevention and criminal justice. It is meant to be used by all actors of the criminal justice system, including legislators, policymakers, any kind of decision makers in criminal justice, both as a reference tool and as a training document. And developing this kind of technical guidance materials, like the handbook, is one of the 3 core areas of our work at the Justice section located in Vienna. We support member states in their reforms efforts in criminal justice on 3 distinct levels. First, by supporting the development of normative instruments, which in the case of restorative justice is the basic principles on the use of restorative justice programs, which was adopted back in 2002. And the second level is by developing technical guidance materials, such as this handbook, which translates the normative documents into more practical and on the ground oriented way so that practitioners can make it their own in their own countries. And then the third is providing technical assistance in criminal justice reform to requesting member states through legislative assistance, training opportunities, and other capacity building activities. As some of you may know, the handbook today, the handbook that we're launching the Portuguese version of, is actually the second edition. The first edition of the handbook was developed nearly now 16 years ago in 2006 to provide practical guidance on the topic of restorative justice after the adoption of the basic principles that I just mentioned. That being the first normative instrument in the area of restorative justice, it needed some practical guidance into how it can be translated into reality in the national context. And that was the background, that's the reason why we had the first edition of the handbook. But as you know, way more so than in other areas of criminal justice, the field of restorative justice has gone through a significant development and expansion since 2006. Both in terms of the number of countries that use restorative justice and on the scope of its use. And it is much more widely used around the world and much more accepted as a way of responding to crime. And a lot of countries are expressing a lot of interest in having it become an institutionalized part of their criminal justice system. So in recognition of this growth, we were requested by member states in 2017 to provide practical guidance on the use of restorative justice, to provide updated guidance on this area. And following this mandate in 2017, UNODC held 2 rounds of expert group meetings, first one in Canada and another one in Thailand, to collect information and feedback from the restorative justice experts around the world. And it's through this type of consultation and review and validation process that made the second edition very comprehensive and updated, with a lot of research findings that has come up in the past 2 decades, and also from all around the world, with national examples provided by the experts in those countries. So against this background, let's now take a look at what is new in the handbook. The first edition of the handbook, it was published at a time where restorative justice was still kind of new, not as well understood, and only thought of as something that you use to divert offenders away from the criminal justice system. But there has been so many developments since, and the second edition reflects the developments that we have seen so far around the world. And the first is, we took into account the fact that there was a much more deeper understanding of restorative justice and its related key terms around the world since the first handbook. So it offers a very in-depth explanation of the key concepts of the basic principles, as well as the terms and considerations that were not necessarily thought of in the field of restorative justice back in 2006. So the part on international normative instruments and the terminology, which is contained in chapter 2, it is a very helpful overview and a guidance material in understanding what restorative justice is all about in the current terms. And another aspect that is completely new in the handbook is a chapter on restorative justice responses to serious crime. As you know, restorative justice has for a long time been thought of as something that applies only to minor offenses, to first-time offenders, or to children alleged of in conflict with the law. And it was not so prevalent back in the early 2000s to apply restorative justice to serious crime. But in the past decade or so, there has been increasingly building evidence base on the significance and the helpfulness of using restorative justice in some cases of serious crime and only in effective cases, and also how to identify those cases and how to deliver them. So if you are interested in this type of information, I would highly recommend that you read the chapter on serious crime, which gives you guidance on implementing the procedural safeguards that we have in serious crime, and then also lays out the common concerns in this area, such as safety of the victims, trauma-informed care, and a prevention of secondary victimization or re-victimization. And it also covers a wide range of specific factors to consider in different types of serious crime, such as intimate partner violence or sexual violence. As you know, these areas of this type of criminality is sometimes under a lot of scrutiny when restorative justice is applied, because of the very risk that we have against victims and also in victim engagement. But there has also been a lot of increasing research and findings that it is actually in those cases where victims feel the most empowered. And that, of course, depends entirely on how the program is built and how much of the fundamental safeguards are adhered to. And there's also a chapter dedicated to how to successfully operate restorative justice programs, which would be of interest for policymakers and community organizers that want to start and ramp up their programs. And more information is provided on program monitoring, evaluation, additional research findings that can really help guide a new initiative when it is being planned. And as I mentioned before, all of this information is accompanied by national examples to illustrate the shared diversity in the implementation around the world. You will see that there's no program that's the same. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. All restorative justice programs are unique. And also in those programs, all those cases are unique. So with that in mind, I think that the handbook can be of a great resource to you when you're looking for inspiration and also learning about the lessons learned around the world on restorative justice. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about the potential of restorative justice. As we all know, the restorative justice programs have a lot of potential in increasing access to justice and also in reducing reoffending rates, in giving a voice to victims in a system that rarely gives it to them under normal circumstances. It is in a lot of countries the only option for victims to have any kind of influence on the outcome of a case, even though, ironically, they're the most affected by the crime. And of course, there's been a lot of progress around the world in institutionalizing the use of restorative justice, but there is still a lot of work to be done. And I'm sure you will agree about that. There is a lot of room for improvement in using restorative justice in the way that is truly intended, and not simply as a tool to reduce court congestion or to divert people away from the criminal justice system, or to apply to only minor cases, as an effort to have speedier resolution of cases. To truly meet the potential of restorative justice, I think that it necessarily requires a multifaceted approach that considers all aspects of restorative justice. And for that, and to truly increase access to justice, especially for those in poverty and from marginalized populations, there first and foremost needs to be adequate and sustained investment into restorative justice programs. And specifically, that investment must be directed towards the availability, the quality, and the ability to use the existing programs effectively. And when any of these three aspects are missing, it is difficult to use restorative justice in a way that is truly intended and have the potential benefits that we want. And the handbook actually provides a lot of information in these aspects, because this is something that we really wanted to hammer home in our publication. Chapter 5 in particular provides a lot of information on how to operate restorative justice programs, including how to promote appropriate referrals to a program, how to prepare the participants appropriately, how to engage with the community, and how to foster and retain funding. And Chapter 7 complements this practical information by sharing some strategic approaches to better collaborate with partners such as governments, NGOs, communities, criminal justice decision makers. And both chapters contain a lot of examples and lessons learned and promising practices, which I think will be really helpful in trying to make it into a nationally owned program. And these kind of coordinated and holistic approach, I think, is very important in improving the use of restorative justice programs in a way that we want. And now I'd like to spend a few minutes, I think I have time, yes, on the issue of legislation on restorative justice. So around the world, there is a very wide range in the legal status and the foundation that the restorative justice programs are built upon. Some are enshrined in law, while others have no formal status. But I really would like to stress here that absence of legislation is not necessarily an obstacle. And many programs are very successfully operated without any legislation, especially if the culture of customary justice, which is different from restorative justice, but shares a lot of similar attributes, have been strong in that country. The chances of restorative justice becoming a more widely accepted response to crime is also higher from what we have seen. But a legal framework on the is while not essential, it is almost it kind of amplifies the efforts that are happening on the ground on the grassroots level, because it gives legitimacy to the program. When a country is developing a new restorative justice program or strategy, it normally comes with it the legislation. It comes with a state budget that is set aside for the program, which is very important in having a program take off and have a wider reach, and also more resources for training, for referrals, for advocacy, for outreach, all of those things that are necessary for a successful operation of the program. So a great example of how legislation can be very helpful in widening the reach of a program is actually in Mexico, where they have adopted the juvenile justice restorative justice referral legislation. The full name is in Spanish, but it's basically it overhauled the juvenile justice system to refer cases to restorative justice as a first response, and in as many cases as possible, which was a real groundbreaking change, and that was really institutionalized by passing of this national legislation. But as I mentioned earlier, legislation is not a must, and at the same time, it is not a solution. It is not the end-all be-all. Having a solid and well-articulated legal basis does not in and of itself guarantee effective implementation. Unless there is adequate investment and proper infrastructure to have the referral systems go, and also out from the restorative justice to other services, other post restorative justice services, and also buy-in from the key stakeholders that are all part of the criminal justice program, the impetus created from legislation, it won't translate into reality. So legislation, while it can be very helpful in legitimizing the programs and having making enough funding available, it is simply not enough to improve initiation, to promote participation, engagement, and accessibility, and in ensuring effective use of restorative justice. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, there has been a significant increase in the development and the use of restorative justice around the world. And this is really a testament to the great potential that restorative justice has in addressing the shortcomings of a conventional criminal justice system, especially in meeting the needs of victims and marginalized populations. And to further increase the restorative justice programs and have it become a widely available option as a response to crime, it's really crucial to foster the appropriate use. The longer inappropriate use goes along, the more potential there is that people will perceive it as an ineffective response to crime, which is the exact opposite of the spirit behind restorative justice. And it's from our point of view with the handbook and also with the Portuguese translation, I hope that the awareness and the understanding and of the benefits and the potential of restorative justice, I hope can be enhanced in not only Brazil and in other Portuguese speaking countries. And we at UNODC are ready to support you in this regard, including through support in legislative reform, in policy advice, in building the capacity of justice practitioners through training opportunities and other types of support that we can identify. So now I see that my time is up. Thank you very much for your attention. And once again, I'd like to really congratulate the team on the launch of the Portuguese version. Thank you very much.